anyway, as you have your lunch, Sarosh,
Yes. Yes.
first of all, I would like to welcome you to the podcast. Welcome you back to the podcast,
Thank you.
and
Thank you.
much
Glad to be
appreciated you
back.
taking the time out to have this very, very interesting discussion. It's a very topical discussion. I
Hmm.
had a similar discussion, not a similar discussion, but a different aspect of the discussion with my brother yesterday. We
Hmm.
were just talking about, the whole reflection of this conflict through the media, and how it's almost like a boy who cried wolf situation, where this
Exactly.
boy has been crying wolf for 20 years and there hasn't been a wolf, a dangerous wolf ever in this boy's history.
Exactly.
So we were just discussing the conflict through that lens, not of course downplaying the actual tragedies in Ukraine. Of
Hmm.
course, that's not the point.
Indeed.
But I guess one thing that came out of our discussion, and I would want to build off of that right now,
Yes.
is essentially the fact that uh, sometimes the way you serve a discussion or serve a a movement
Hmm.
is by staying away from the movement,
Yes.
right? And an example that we gave was, let's say, if it was the a movement for the rights and liberation of women in the workplace, and
Hmm.
Harvey Weinstein joins that
Yes.
movement,
It
it's
looks
gonna
very callous.
it's gonna harm the movement more
Hmm.
than, even if he brings the whole bank to
Hmm.
the movement, it's gonna harm the movement more than he could imagine it's going to help him, right?
Hmm.
So
Or
for
or an,
him, if he yeah for him, if he wants to really help this movement, the best
stay
he can
away.
do is stay away from it, right?
Exactly.
Similarly, we said that the best the United States and the likes can do, because they bring with them a massive baggage of incompetence and lack of integrity,
Hmm.
built over the course of multiple years and decades.
Hmm.
So if they bring in their weightage and their moral policing into the story,
Hmm.
it's gonna harm the story even more than it could probably benefit it. So I
Indeed.
think this is similar to what we were wanted to discuss in this podcast, is
Exactly.
essentially the moral obligation, or the moral policing that NATO, or the
The
NATO or the
West
likes of
and
the
the.
country, the West essentially has, in this particular crisis.
Hmm.
And one thing I wanted to add before I'll give you the stage to
Hmm.
further elaborate on this, is the Chinese foreign minister, on Twitter. I don't know if it's a foreign minister or the foreign ministry. The guy who's like famous for
Hmm.
bringing down the West through his tweets has been having a ball game ever
Hmm.
since this whole thing happened, because he's been like, I don't know, stating facts, I guess, because like,
Hmm.
number of countries invaded by us, zero, versus invaded by you guys as in the United States,
Yeah.
and the conflicts caused,
Hmm.
in it has its own numbers. So, um with that, what do you think is essentially like, how do you explain this idea to someone who's like freedom lover here in the United States, who's one of those people who said like, yeah, we should go help Ukraine, and we should send our troops and what have you, those hawks as we refer to them here in the United
Hmm.
States.
The Warhawks.
How do you
Yes.
how do you explain to them the idea of staying away from a movement, if they really want to, basically, if you love something, you have to let it go, kind of thing? how would
Exactly.
you how would you elaborate on that?
So, as Zeba, you've seen my status on the whole situation the
Yeah.
other day that I posted.
Yep.
That uh, it's not just the United States; it's in general. I mean, this is where this whole concept of the drawing room experts kind of comes from, right? Where
Yeah.
everybody feels they're opinionated on
True.
having a subject matter expertise on this whole situation. It's funny you mentioned this because last night I was at a Niyaz,
Uh-huh.
and for those of your viewers that don't know what a Niyaz is, it's basically a religious gathering and like dinner that we have with friends and family. So and there, one of my friends was explaining to another friend of mine the whole, why the gas prices are going up, and
Mm-hmm.
how And I know this is slightly off track, but this I'm gonna bring it back.
No, no,
And
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
he was talking about how Biden, had gone to the OPEC nations and the Gulf Coast countries and said, literally begged them, please keep production of oil high. My, like the midterms are coming up. We need this, right?
Right.
And then this uncle, I'm sure he meant well, but he's like a typical Daisy uncle. He's like, no, no, no. Let me tell you what you're doing wrong, and this is not. And it's that is quintessential. Quintessentially, it describes what the issue here is, right?
Yeah,
Where you have a bunch of people that keep talking about Ukraine and about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and how Putin's a bad guy. I'm not saying, I'm not going to draw a inference on any of this. This is
yeah,
your own conclusion. But my very first question would be, I would like to pick up a map of Eurasia, and I would like to ask these people, show me on the map, where is Ukraine, where is Russia, where is Moscow, where's Kiev.
right.
Let's start with that, because I feel like most people don't even know where these things are. And like you said, if you really care, like why do you care? I mean, yes, it's a humanitarian crisis. There's a millions of humanitarian crises going on across the world.
Yep.
Um, we have a honestly in the United States, we have a humanitarian crisis happening at our southern border,
True.
and it has been happening. People should look up what's going on with unaccompanied minors trying to um, sneak across literally from Guatemala all the way through Central America into the United States for a better life. And when I say unaccompanied minors, I don't just mean someone who's under 18. I mean, like, we're talking kids as young as like 8 or 9,
Wow.
and they're like
Yeah.
riding trains. And there's a whole documentary on this, and people can look this up. So you have this crisis going on. So why are you not talking about that? Are you not? And the other thing is, we need to step back, all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and look at first. Obviously, I'd say look at the geopolitical situation of what is going on post-Soviet Union. Right? These are
Mm-hmm.
two post-Soviet states, and they're not just post-Soviet states. They are the two of the largest post-Soviet states, and most people don't may not realize the history of Ukraine. Um, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear stockpile in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed. So it was
And that
United
was,
States.
and that if I'm not mistaken, that belonged to Russia, though, right? That was not
No,
a
no, no.
Ukrainian or
These were Soviet
Soviet. Yeah, exactly.
Union,
But
which
essentially, yeah, I think one mistake everyone's making
Mhm,
on that particular
mhm.
angle of it is that they're suggesting that Ukraine gave up their nuclear
No, no. So
weapons
it
because they
actually
wanted
did.
to
It
use for
did. So
Islamic.
that's the thing. That's the thing.
But
They
it
did.
wasn't there though. It wasn't
No, it
there
was.
though.
It was. So it was. So it's like this, right? Let's take the example of the United States, right? So let's say there's a bunch of nuclear stockpiles in Texas and in California
Huh.
and in New York, right? Let's say
Huh.
the United States for some reason collapses, right?
Right.
Now
Right.
you have the independent Republic of Texas, you have the Republic of California Republic, you have the Republic of State of New York. Let's say Texas has a bunch of nukes,
Right.
right? They do not belong to California. They belong to Texas because that's where they were stockpiled.
But they didn't have the keys. For example, if Russia had the, also sorry, if Texas had the keys to those nukes, then yes, that probably
So
would
they
have belonged to them.
that
But
is
it
true.
belonged to Moscow.
Well, yes and no. So the way it was it was technically theirs. So it was Ukraine's, but the thing was, it's like you may have a car, but you don't have the key to that car,
True.
right?
True.
And
Exactly. Exactly. And
one
I'm not
second.
debating like the ownership of the nukes at this point. What I'm suggesting is that
Mhm.
this whole glorification, which is kind of like portrayed here, that Ukraine was so magnanimous in their approach to foreign policy that they gave up
Yeah.
their
No,
arms,
to me,
like
the way
they're
I
some
look,
Norway or something.
yeah, yeah, no, they're not. They're not some saintly state. To be honest with you, I think a better way of looking at it is how they were conned and hoodwinked by both Russia and the West.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about the West first. I
Yes.
think the one
Yeah.
thing that
So.
I wanted to really focus on here
Mhm,
is essentially the the decline of the NATO,
Mhm,
the idea of NATO. First of all, the idea of NATO, and then the decline
mhm,
of the idea itself. Do you think this is the first time we're seeing, an indication of the decline of, of this particular superpower group, if you like? Um, because I can give you instances in the recent past. I mean, the whole war in Afghanistan is I would say a slap on their face or two.
mhm.
The whole
So,
Iraq thing was an embarrassment to them as well. And then we have a recent, like, we have the last president on record stating
mhm,
that he doesn't, quote unquote, understand this idea of United States protecting these other countries when we have problems at home. And honestly, you know what,
mhm,
I have I have massive disagreements with Trump, but on this point, I was like, hey, it kind of makes sense. Like, why do we have to be involved from a NATO perspective? Like, why do we have to have this discussion in the first place, where this in itself, like in its core, doesn't make any particular sense?
mhm. So for us to understand that, first we have to understand what is NATO and why it exists, right?
Right.
And again, I want to make it clear I am not a subject matter expert on any of this. This
The
is
fact
just
you're on this podcast, I think that's
yeah,
evidently clear.
yeah, yeah. So I think what we have to go back to the history of when NATO was created. It was created post
Right.
World War One or World War Two, sorry,
Right.
uh, and basically at the fall of Berlin, it was abundantly clear that as the fascists fell in Europe, fascism fell in Europe, the big showdown was going to be between the capitalist democracies of the West and the communist socialist republics of the East. Basically, the two main superpowers that came out of that were the Soviet Union and the United States.
True.
And NATO was basically created to be a, and like as we understand, Europe was completely decimated and was in rubbles after World War II. Right?
Hmm.
They even now, if you go visit parts of Germany and France, they still have areas where they have landmines that are active, and they still have you can find old remnants of like battlefields and stuff, and there's actually like pictures you can see. So like Europe was completely in the ruins, and they did not want to fall to communism. They did not want Russia to take over. So they made an alliance with the US, and that where the US was this prosperous nation, which most people need to understand that the United States was the only Western power, or actually the only major player in World War II to come out completely unscathed.
True.
The only thing they had to really deal with was uh, Pearl Harbor. That was
Yeah.
probably the worst part that they had. But mainland United States never had to face any
Like
problems like
bombings or anything like that. Yeah.
exactly, and that's because they're in the middle of there's there was no way no one's coming to the U.S.
That's physically impossible for other countries
Yes,
to.
and that is strategically, territorially, U.S. is in a very strategic point where they are located.
Right.
So, in order to protect their European allies, they formed NATO, right,
Hmm.
to quote unquote stop the Red Scare, the Red Menace, and the mask to stop Moscow and the Kremlin from invading. Now the problem is NATO started inviting people, nations left and right,
Hmm.
especially post Soviet Union. In 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, uh, you had a bunch of states that were formerly part of the Eastern Bloc and the
Including
Warsaw
Ukraine.
Pact, including Ukraine, yes, and Russia had used the Eastern Europe, meaning Poland, East Germany, uh, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, all these countries basically from the Soviet Union border to the Western, what is considered the Western countries, which are like Switzerland, France, West Germany, Spain, all these countries. That was supposed to be the buffer between them and the West.
Hmm.
As these countries started joining, getting autonomy from the Soviet power, they started joining up NATO. And the latest of them to want to join NATO is Ukraine. Ukraine borders Russia.
True.
Russia does not want hostile nations at its doorsteps.
Right.
NATO is basically an extension of the United States. So if if Ukraine joins NATO, you're going to have
It's like
this
having a
issue.
province of United States right next to
Exactly,
Russia.
or territory. Yeah. Now the thing with NATO that most people don't understand is NATO hasn't worked as great as you would like to. In theory, it's a great alliance for the Western powers, but as we've seen in Iraq and even in Afghanistan and elsewhere, a lot of NATO countries are skeptic of, wait, why is US getting to tell everybody what to do? We
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
want, like to be pushed
Very
around.
hesitant. They're very hesitant in being involved in recent
Exactly,
conflicts
exactly,
for obvious reasons, of course.
exactly. And they definitely do not want to be involved in conflicts that involve Russia. And the reason for that is simply because Russia is in their backyard.
Yeah,
And they
they have to bear
understand,
the brunt of it.
yes, the war is not coming to North America. If there is a war, it will be in Eastern Europe, basically, and parts of
Hmm.
Western Europe. So these countries don't want to deal with that. And it's I think the greatest example of this is France during the 2003 Iraq invasion. France did not join the U.S.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you recall, but George Bush and his administration, they went on record calling the French traitors. And I remember in U.S. they were going to start calling French fries freedom fries, and
Oh yeah, I
this
remember this. Yeah,
ridiculousness that because
God,
yeah,
feel
exactly, right.
it's
But
embarrassing.
it is. But the problem with the NATO pact, the way it works is if I get in a fight, we all get in a fight. It's a gang. It's
Yeah,
literally a
it's a
gang,
gang.
right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like if you go after one of our boys, we're all gonna come after you.
Yeah, essentially
And yeah,
that's what it is.
now to your second point, I do feel that this is the decline of the Pax Americana, or
Yeah,
the American peace. This is the end of the rope, and
if we believe it actually existed.
exactly. I mean, we can say that since 1945, U.S. and the Soviet Union were the two major superpowers, and yes, in a way, because the Soviet Union collapsed, that United States won the War, quote unquote. I don't know if
Right.
how do you win a war that was never fought, but um, having said that, it's like every empire, the U.S. is also collapsing, right? And I think the best way, and this is not to galvanize the U.S. or China or Russia, but if you look in the wild, when you have an older lion,
Mm,
when a younger lion comes into its territory, it starts challenging the older lion.
it does. Yeah.
And that's kind of what's happening with the US now, where Russia is back on its feet. China's a growing economy. India is a growing economy. And these countries, and even Europe,
And
they are realizing that, wait, why are we listening to the US? And US is losing its grip over the um, the world, basically.
true.
And while this was happening in Ukraine, the Ukraine Russian war was happening. What I don't know if you realize, and if your listeners realize, nine Chinese jets flew over Taiwan.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
So that's if you want to
There's
talk,
that.
yeah,
There's that happening as well. I mean, one thing that has always interests me
hmm
in what's going on right now is essentially the wisdom of why this is taking place and why this is happening. If people like ourselves, if we can
hmm
see the writing on the wall, and I'm sure a lot of the US intellectuals or you know think tanks have been seeing this writing on the wall, that they don't
hmm
have the same level of moral authority or the same level of you know dominance over the world as they did
hmm
maybe before the Afghanistan war, right?
hmm
um and the fact that the Afghan war was a massive failure is, as indication of that in itself, that you guys don't have enough leeway or say. I mean, coming from a Pakistani perspective, I couldn't have imagined growing up, in the Musharraf era
Mhm.
or the PPP era, late 20, like in the first uh,
Mhm.
decade of the 21st century, that Pakistan would really separates itself from the United States. And
Mhm.
now we're at the stage where Biden becomes president and hasn't even had a chat with the Pakistani prime minister.
Mhm.
And we have the Pakistani prime minister visiting Russia in the middle of
I
what
actually want to talk
seems
about that. I thought
you
that
want
was
to talk about
hilarious. Yeah, I
that?
thought it was kind of funny. Imran Khan, he's in Russia, right when in the thick of it. He's
Basically
chilling
cutting
with.
the ribbons to the
Yeah,
World War Three, essentially.
exactly, exactly.
But essentially, I mean, I mean, these are huge things. These are huge events. Where, I mean, someone like me, I couldn't have imagined that this would probably be at a stage where Pakistan is almost kind of like breaking from the shackles of the United States influence, and
Mhm.
now you might argue that they're going into someone else's shackles,
Mhm.
i.e., China or what have you, right? But
Yeah.
that's another thing. But that in itself is a huge indication of the writing on the wall, as I was referring to.
In the words of
Why
Bob
do you?
Dylan, in the
Yeah,
words of Bob
exactly.
Dylan, times are changing.
Times are changing, exactly.
Yep.
So, I mean, how does then this happen? Like, how do we get find ourselves in this place where the writing on the wall couldn't be, bolder, but then United States still finds itself in this mess, which would essentially wreck its economy. And Biden, for him to know that, for him to survive the first term, he needs to make sure that these prices come down and the inflation goes down as well. I mean, this is not rocket science at all. I mean, this is something that this is 101,
Mhm.
surviving the first term. Why
Exactly.
is he involving why is he, engulfing himself into this mess, when at the same point I supported him when he decided to get out of Afghanistan, because it was a wise decision from an American perspective, where they said, you know what, this is a failed thing. It's not working anymore. We're dumping money for no return at all. So
Mhm.
let's just get the hell out of here and concentrate on our own mess. Uh, essentially what we have in the US.
Mhm.
But then, literally a few months later, now we are at this stage. Why do you think this is happening? Is it just purely because of the military industrial complex, who just wants to make money, and then all of that stuff that happens when we, that discussion goes around left and right, that people are just out there to make money out of war? Or are we missing a certain wisdom from this that even we can't, in our
So,
sane minds, comprehend?
so let's go into the mind of the 46th president of the United States for a second, right? Shall we?
Right, right.
Joseph R. Biden
A
first
lot
got
of webs in the
elected.
mind, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of webs. I mean,
And
the guy does
skeletons.
have a stuttering. Yeah, a lot of skeletons. He got elected in 1972 as the senator from Delaware.
Delaware, yeah.
1972. We're in 2022. The man has literally 50 years of political experience.
Half a
He,
century. Wow.
half a century. We're talking right right at the height of the Cold War. This is before Nixon went to China. Nixon went to
Yep.
China in 73. So this is
Yep.
we're talking literally, you know, this guy saw the thick of the Vietnam War. He saw the collapse of the Soviet Union. He saw the rise of neoconservatism in the United States. The rise
He could
of
write a
the
book. He could write a history book, essentially.
he
This
could
guy has
he
been,
from his experience, yeah,
yeah, just from
and
his like first account, like
yeah,
first hand experience, he could write a history book.
yes, his struggles, shall we
His
call it?
struggle. There you go.
Yes. So the thing is, and he is a old school politician and statesman, right? The, and I think that is part of the problem, right? You're dealing with a man who was in his late 70s,
Hmm.
who again has wealth of political wisdom and experience.
But
And I'm
out of
not
his depth.
praising him, but thing is, he's out of touch completely with the modern world. He still thinks we're operating with U.S. as the the savior of the world, right? And
But then,
the
how
the
do you
pro-
marry that with the Afghanistan pullout? How do you marry that with that?
well, to them it's a success. We got Bin Laden,
Yeah, but that wasn't that
and
perceived to be kind of like a progressive thing, like progressive agenda of getting out of Afghanistan. Like Bernie has been on it for ages, right?
yes,
So it
no,
kind
but
of like it perceived as this progressive thing to do, as opposed
mhm.
to what you're describing that Biden is essentially like a Democrat from the 50s or 60s,
So that's the problem, right? Like that you're dealing with a dichotomy, right?
right?
Like there's a reality on the ground, and then there's what the president wants to hear, right? And one thing we need to understand: these guys are living in echo chambers.
Hmm.
The president is, in my opinion, in an echo chamber because yes, the writing is clear on the wall, right? Why do they keep doing this? And the other thing is, it's public opinion. There is bipartisan support for the U.S. to intervene on behalf of Ukraine.
Or yeah, there is.
There's a lot of.
Even if they know the consequences of that, I mean, if they do intervene, the whatever you're seeing of the gas prices right now, that's just the start of it then, right?
I mean, the war propaganda. I mean, turn on Fox News, turn on MSNBC, CNN.
But isn't, like, I saw, yeah, you're absolutely right though, but I mean, one of the things that I'm noticing now is that Fox News and the quote unquote intellectuals that go on there are
Mhm.
almost kind of like arguing Vladimir Putin's point. Like they're almost, for
That's the
them,
other
they're
part.
in a rock and a hard place, because if they back Biden, then they go against their core of not backing Biden. But
Hmm.
then if they go against him, they're backing
Russia.
Putin and Russia,
So
which
that's
is again
also,
not
by
a
the way,
good
that
not a
also
good
kind of
look for
play.
them.
So for the Biden administration and the U.S., it kind of also plays into trying to get back at Russia for the 2016 election and the Russian
Yeah, yeah,
intervention. Now, do I think that the U.S. is going to put boots on the ground? Absolutely not. There will be no boots on the ground. But what we're going to see is, and we're already seeing it, sanctions against the Russian administration, members of the Russian administration, and their top brass of their military, and embargoes
which
against.
they are reading as acts of war, by the way,
Of course they
as
are.
described by them. Yeah,
And I mean, technically speaking, that is a war.
yeah, yeah. It is. Yeah,
It's
you're right.
not physical, but like, what is war? War is to bring your enemies to their knees.
Yeah,
That's what they're doing.
yep.
And what may end up happening is, and I think Washington needs to decide very soon that if they're going to do this or not. But they're going to start sending military aid to Ukraine to bolster the Ukrainian military in fending itself against the Russian invasion. Now, the thing is, if they don't do that soon, I believe that Kiev will fall very soon.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I think so
once
too.
Kiev falls, the two options you have is either you're going to have a puppet regime in Ukraine, or you're going to have all of Ukraine annexed by Russia. And a lot of Russians do not believe that Ukraine should be independent.
Oh, yeah, it's such a weird thing. Like, fast forward 5 years from now,
Hmm.
where do you see, like, how do you see life progressing as normal then? Like, what's the normal then? What would be the normal post whatever's going to happen in Ukraine right now, whatever's happening? Are we going to see NATO and America kind of like adjust themselves to the new normal, like they did with Afghanistan and the Taliban government? Like they're adjusting themselves with the new normal? Or do you feel like there will be some sort of a fight back, and things might, it's going to be a 50-50 affair, where part of normal what the United States wants is going to stay there, and part of normal what Russia wants is going to be there too?
I can actually see that Ukraine might split into two. It's
Okay.
quite possible. Like the
Okay.
eastern portions go to Russia, and the western portion go to the U. I mean, I don't see Ukraine joining NATO anytime soon, or the EU. I don't see that being the reality. I feel like there's going to be a lot of pushback from the from Putin and company.
Hmm.
Um, and I honestly, it's going to be kind of hard to predict that what may end up happening because there's so many factors right now, right? And
Right.
we forget COVID is still around,
Yeah, that's still
and
news.
yeah, it's still news. I mean, I mean, you're asking me what might happen 5 years ago. We might be on the क्या कहते हैं, He variant at that point.
I know exactly the umpteenth variant on that. Yeah,
Yeah, because
exactly. That's true.
we I think we're going to run out of Greek alphabets. We're going to be going into Arabic alphabets at that point.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, अच्छा मेरे दिमाग में एक और चीज़ आई थी about this
Mm-hmm.
whole thing is um uh, I saw a poll on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially the question was, if Russia would have given, like, if the United States and NATO would have given Russia enough comfort around Ukraine not joining NATO or EU,
Mm-hmm.
would Russia still have done what they've done?
Yes.
How would you? Oh, they would still have done it, regardless of they were joining NATO or not.
भाई इसकी सिंपल ये है कि ये पुतिन जो कर रहा है इस वक्त
Hmm.
is exactly what Hitler did in 1939,
Okay.
1930s when he came into power. I am trying to combine the Germanic people. That's what Hitler's claim to fame was.
Hmm.
That's why he invaded all these countries. If you look at it, where is Putin invading? The Slavic Russian people.
Hmm.
He's trying to unify the great, and it's he's even said it, the Holy Rus, the Holy Russia. He wants to reunify the Russian people, and so I think he would have still invaded. Um, I think that's been his plan at least since 2014. He was just biding time, and
Hmm.
the thing is, he realized, Brexit happened. He realized, the Afghanistan war and the failures in Iraq. He saw major fracture within the U.S. Internally and NATO
Self-imposed, by
internally.
the way.
Yes, self-imposed. And all he's done is he's just exploited those visions within the U.S. and the West. He sees that they're not all aligned.
And he's taken advantage of that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I can tell you this: in 2 years, there's a very likelihood that Donald Trump comes back as the 47th president.
Yeah, it's not far from reality. I mean, at
It's
this
not. I
point,
mean,
anything's possible. I mean,
yeah.
especially with this whole thing happening,
Hmm.
that's even, that's going to push people even more towards the side of Trump, because um, he had argued this America first,
Yeah.
make America great again kind of
But.
thing. And
Hmm.
the more Biden kind of pushes towards like an involvement overseas,
Hmm.
even if it's like through sanctions, which eventually ends up hurting themselves,
Hmm.
he's going to put a lot of that impetus on the people to actually look at other,
Hmm.
like, outwards,
Exactly, and
and
that's
essentially just destroy this whole
this is
progressive movement.
a death spiral basically.
Yeah.
And this is obviously this is to be honest with you, this is not a progressive. This is a neoliberalist movement
Oh, true. This is not
of
a progressive movement.
globalism. This globalist hegemony, right? This is the end of the world order as we know it.
Hmm.
And and this is obviously a joke. This all started because they shot that damn gorilla. They didn't kill Harambe. This is
Yeah.
the Harambe's
Yeah,
revenge.
exactly. I mean, you can argue, yes, a lot of a lot of things turned upside down after that happened.
But yeah.
How do you react to um these parallels that media draws every time? When it was Trump, it was like Trump is the Hitler, and Trump's the new Hitler and all of that, and now Putin is the Hitler. How do you see these word plays happening? Do you think that a lot of the times they are just exaggerations because they just want to make one party look extremely evil? Or do you feel like there's weightage in that? You've just described what Hitler did in the 1930s, to compare that to what Putin is trying to do.
Mhm.
Do you feel like the parallels kind of make sense, or do you consider Putin as a Hitler 2.0 or something like that?
All I'm gonna say is shame on the mass media. Shame on media. They're warhawks. They're disingenuous. They're disgusting. They're the scum of the earth, in my opinion.
True.
You just read any article, read any newspaper. The way they're portraying this war, like it's like it's disgusting. It's what they're doing. They're literally the military industrial complex's mouthpiece.
True.
This is worse than what they were doing during the Iraq War and the Afghan War.
And the worst part is that there are people, mm, and sadly a huge majority of them, still falling for it.
They are because
There's no
this is
skeptical look at, like, hey, you know what, okay, I see what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, but dude, because you're pushing this so much, this is giving me, because like
Mhm,
my reaction when this all happened, I still have no particular opinion on what I mean. The whole thing, right or wrong, is probably another debate, like, right?
mhm, mhm,
But the whole narrative that's been shoved down my throat at
mhm,
this point,
mhm, mhm.
I am already kind of like, wary of this. I'm like, dude, come on,
Exactly.
you guys. The same messenger who's giving me this news
Mhm,
has had a history of, wrong messages delivered or incorrect information being. So of course I am bound to at least take a minute to absorb this. People not
mhm,
even doing that. People, the moment you take a minute, that reminds me of whatever happened post 9/11, where the moment you took a minute to just rationalize things, they were on you. They were like, so you mean like Afghanistan is right and US is wrong, so you're anti-national? What, dude? I'm just like, just take a breather. Not everything has to be anti-national or
exactly.
anti-US. So if anyone's trying to like digest and really comprehend what's going on, they're automatically in Russia's camp,
Yes.
right? And anyone who's not doing that is the good guy, and he's like supporting the truth and the poor people
Exactly. And
getting it. It's ridiculous.
it is absolutely ridiculous. The problem with all this is you're dealing with a populace that has been systematically dumbed down for the last 50 plus years. Um, I mean,
Yeah, interesting.
you have a young daughter who's going to be starting grade school soon. And
True.
you're gonna get first-hand experience. You can, like Ali Bhai, we have talked with him. He has kids, um, and these kids going to school. Um, the American education system has completely gone down the drain. There's no critical thinking. There is no self-reflection. There's no questioning of the authority. And these are important. And to be honest with you, these are supposed to be the hallmarks of a democracy,
Yeah.
where you're supposed to question what the government is saying to you. You're not supposed to just take it as wholehearted truth. And unfortunately, we live in an era of fake news. Uh, this the ghost of Kiev pilot that they were all talking about, how he shot
Hmm.
down 6 Russian MiGs. Turns out it was fake. It was all hoax, and there's a Snopes article on it proving that it's fake. But
But
it's
that
being
ship has sailed, essentially. That
yeah,
people have already believed it, and they moved on to the next thing, believing the next thing. So that
exactly.
ship of analyzing information and seeing what's right and what's wrong has
Was
sailed. And I see a lot of like people who like to think like me, or have their hearts in the right place,
mm,
already putting in caveats whenever they're describing what's happening
mm,
in Ukraine. Already putting in caveats saying that the coverage of the media in Ukraine is insane, and rightly so, in
mm,
parentheses. So they're saying
mm.
that, yeah, they're doing the right thing, but then they shed light on other, the hypocrisy of the media, essentially,
Of
for
course.
not covering what's happening in Syria
Mhm,
or Yemen or Iraq, with the same. I mean, I just saw someone on CNN. I don't know if you've seen that video,
mhm.
describing uh, Ukraine and Kiev as more civilized than Iraq and Afghanistan. And so he was trying to say, what he was trying to say was that, these people aren't used to like war and conflicts like, people of Iraq and Afghanistan were. So you can say that they're more civilized,
Yeah, that's racist.
and
That's to be
and
honest
he
with you.
was
So I'll
and he
I'll
said
come
and
out.
he said I'm trying to find the right words so that it's So if that's you trying to find the right words, then I'm interested in what you going, saying
Exactly.
whatever is in your head. So stuff
Racist.
like that,
They're
exactly. And then
racist, and it's
Bulgarian prime minister, I don't know if you've seen his statement.
I
He
have
said
not.
he said that, when he was asked that if people are to leave Ukraine and migrate and to all parts of Europe, will you be expect will you be accepting, the war refugees? So he was like, yeah, of course, these are, educated people. The refugee wave that happened a few years ago, we, sad to say that wasn't the case then, but right now these are like IT experts, these are educated people, of course we'll accept them. So yeah, of
That's
course,
what it
like,
is, right? It's the war West versus Islam, right? Like that's part of the problem, and it's again the going back to the main what I think is part of the biggest part of the problem. And to be honest with you, these pundits in the media, they're exactly the same in
yeah,
that regards. It's do you even know where Ukraine is on the map? That's my question to any of these people. Okay, like, and that's what it is, right? Like, they don't know jack shit. Excuse my language, but they don't know
yeah,
jack. And it's like, okay, most of these people don't realize that 1991, when the Soviet Union was collapsing, all the world, all of the world's cameras were on the Kremlin, and everybody was praying that Boris Yeltsin doesn't get killed. Because these same people, these educated white Eastern European people, by the way, there's massive racism against Eastern Europeans in Europe, what
true,
a lot of people don't realize. But remember, they're a shade lighter than us, so they're
yeah,
now, included. But
of course, yeah, yeah,
they were on the brink of a civil war. You want to talk about educated white people and not being used to Eastern Europe, not being used to plagued with war? 1990s, the Kosovo War, the Bosnian
Bosnia,
genocide that
yeah,
happened.
yeah,
That wasn't
yeah,
Muslims. That was Serbians, Slavic people who committed that genocide against the Bosnian people.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and so it's
It's just
shame on the
whitewashing of
media.
history. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
whitewashing, pun
it's
intended, of,
whitewashing of history.
yeah.
It's racism. It's xenophobia. It's and to be honest with you, the problem is the West thinks it is even though they have no moral high ground, they still foolishly believe that they are the moral authority of the world.
I think 50 years ago, even then they weren't, but at that time, people didn't have the audacity to call them out on that. But right now, I
Exactly.
feel like every country in this world, be it like a weak country or or a powerful one, for whatever they do, they at least will have to admit that, yeah, US, you guys don't have, like, let's just sit this one out for you guys.
Yeah.
You have no
Take a
authority to
take a break. Yeah, take a
take a
break.
break from, yeah, take a break from everything, focus on your midterms, and
Mhm.
let's just have
Mhm.
all the other people handle this for once.
Exactly. And I mean, as a Pakistani, this is what I'm gonna say. Um, Thank you, Dr. A.Q. Khan. Thank you, Dr.
True,
A.Q. Khan, for
true,
giving us the nukes because we would have been Ukraine.
true. I mean, yeah,
The
I've been
Indian
seeing a
troops
lot
would
of
be
that.
walking in Islamabad.
Exactly. I mean, the whole idea of deterring war. I mean, of course, having nukes
Mhm.
does, put us in that position where we are able to deter a lot of these basically walk-in invasions,
Mhm.
as Russia is doing. It's like a
Mhm.
pretty much a walk-in invasion for them.
Mhm.
Anyway, so
Yes.
great discussion again,
Always a
Sarosh. Really
pleasure.
appreciate
Yes.
it. I hope I helped you finish and digest your biryani.
Yes,
Are you eating
you
biryani?
did. Thank you.
Is
Yes, you
that a,
did.
homemade biryani, or what is
No,
it?
no, no. It's there's a local restaurant here called Tarka, and their lamb is halal. So just grab one of
Ah,
those. Yeah, yeah.
nice, nice,
When
nice.
you come to Austin, you'll realize there's a lot of partial halal places. So
That's good.
it's slim pickings, but we take what we can. Yeah.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Again, really appreciate it, man, your time. And
Always.
yeah, I have a few more things that I want to
Mhm.
discuss with you. Hopefully,
Yeah.
inshallah, we'll find some time to,
Inshallah. Yes.
have that discussion.
Mhm.
But as always, really appreciate your time, man.
Yes, and we need to bring Ali Bhai and talk
Oh
about
yeah,
the
Alif.
aliens of Quran.
Yeah, aliens in the Quran. That's true.
Yes,
That's true. We need to have a sci-fi episode on that for
yes,
sure.
yes, we do. Yes, we do. And on that note, that's how I want to end it. Like, how we can talk about Star Wars, like Kenobi's coming up,
Hmm.
and on Disney Plus, and then Marvel. That's the way people are discussing Ukraine and Russia,
True. True.
and that's terrifying to me. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
That this is not fan fiction. This is not the Clone Wars. Okay, this is a real life war where you have real life
Flesh and
people.
blood. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
actual human beings, and it's really sad, and I really do hope people step back and understand that what they're talking about. Like, just like the U.S. needs to take a break
Yeah.
from not being involved in everything. I think we the people need to take a break and not expressing our opinions on every matter. It's
Yeah.
okay if you
Especially.
don't know.
Yes. Exactly. I mean, the thing is, especially when you have an influence, right? Like
Indeed,
when you whatever you say is believed by people, aka the
exactly,
media. I mean,
exactly.
like you said, if you can't really point Ukraine out on a map, then it's a good indication that you should probably take a backseat.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think they even did a Pew Research poll. It might not be Pew, but they did a research poll where they found more people that wanted the U.S. to intervene in Ukraine Russia issue did not know where Ukraine was.
Yeah, of course, of course,
Yeah.
of
So
course.
I mean,
There was there was
I
another
even
research that still thinks Agrabah is a real place.
yeah, and
I don't know if you saw that.
I have, and Gary Johnson, the former Libertarian candidate for the U.S. presidency in 2016, I believe it was, or 2012, forget which one. But anyways, this guy, they asked him what's his take on Aleppo, and his response was, "What is Aleppo?"
Yes, I saw that. Yep, yep.
And
Wow.
that's the reality. These people want to run for political office. One thing I can say, with as much as I disagree with the current administration on virtually everything that they stand for, especially their
Hmm.
domestic policy and their failure to address the crises at hand, I will say that we are in some ways blessed that we have someone like Biden, who is an expert on foreign policy, who was a former chair for Council on Foreign Relations within the Senate, and is a subject matter expert on Russia and on the Middle East and Central Asia at the helm at this moment, right? Like, imagine if Trump was in office right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a low bar, but yes, you're right. That's
It's a low bar, but it's the reality. And not even Trump. What if someone like um, Ron DeSantis of Florida was in the White
yeah,
House,
or even Bush
or
for that matter. Bush
or
wasn't like
Bush? Yeah,
the smartest guy in the
yeah, he was an
uh,
idiot,
yeah,
and
winded into the White House essentially
I mean, he did. I mean,
for 8 years,
that's the thing, right?
more or less.
It's basically a popularity contest. This is a popularity contest,
Popularity, yeah. It's a
right?
pageant. That's what it is. Yeah,
Because like,
they should call it the presidential pageant. That's it.
it is because the way I look at it, and I know this is kind of dragging in, but and this is my last thought on this, but I ask people, like, if you want to understand why Trump won in 2016 instead of Hillary, is if you were at a bar, who would you want to go drink with? Or for Muslims, who would you want to have if you were having like a hookah session? Who would you want there? Would you want Hillary or would you want Trump? Who do you
You
think
want
would be
the
more
entertainer
fun?
guy. You
Yeah,
want the entertainer guy. You want to
and
have the
that's how
entertainer guy in the
people
entire
vote.
session. Yeah, essentially, yeah. That's true.
I mean, this is why Imran Khan, to be honest with you, and nothing against the captain, but the old skipper, but the reason he won partially
It's
was because
popularity. Yeah,
it
it's a
was
popularity concept.
yeah,
Yeah,
he was a famous cricketer. He's And the other thing is he can actually articulate a sentence, unlike a lot of these other politicians.
exactly.
He
और
won.
मैंने ये जो भी मेरी जो लास्ट पॉडकास्ट अभी मैंने इम्प्रॉम्प्टू गाड़ी में बैठ के रिकॉर्ड करी थी, it was a response to that as well क्योंकि मैंने एक जगह Twitter पे पढ़ा था कि people were feeling like embarrassed by the fact that Imran Khan found himself in Moscow during this whole World War III kind of scenario happening, and I
Hmm.
was like, my reaction to that was, are you kidding me? Are you really embarrassed now? I think the embarrassment ship has sailed. When you've
Hmm.
had like leaders reading off pieces of paper in front of presidents of the United States, and still not
That
like
and इसकी
managing to
best
get your thought across.
इसकी best example ये है कि if you ever have seen the movie, it's a Tom Hanks movie called Charlie Wilson's War.
Oh, I have
It's
seen
about
that one.
this.
Yes, yeah, yes, yes,
Om
yes.
Puri plays General Zia in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's a scene in there where General Zia is talking to Charlie Wilson, to Congressman Wilson, and saying the foreign aid that Pakistan is supposed to receive from the U.S. is Pakistan's right.
Wow. So he's calling an aid, but then also right. Awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
No, no, so what he's basically, अगर उर्दू में इसको ट्रांसलेट करें, तुम्हें हमें हमें भीख देना तुम्हारा हमारा हक है कि तुम हमें भीख
I'm a
दो.
big
ये
especially
हमारा
when
हक है.
that
That's
explains
the
a lot of the
president of Pakistan. The chief of the army staff is saying
yeah.
that.
So he's the most intellectual guy in two institutions, the
Yes.
political institution and also the army institution, arguably. And
Yes.
that's the level. That's the
And
level.
by the way, I'm just going to do my shameless plug. I have been able to get in touch with Sajjad Haider Saab of uh, Fight of the Falcon fame.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yeah, so I think we briefly talked about that. So,
Yes, yes.
inshallah, in
Let's
March,
have
I'm
him
gonna,
on, man. Yeah, let's have
yeah,
him
and I'm
on. I
gonna
mean,
try to
that
see
would
if
be
we can
awesome.
bring him on. It would be great to have him talk, and it
Like
would be
speaking
great.
of first-hand historical experiences,
Yes,
that's one guy you want to hear from.
yeah, he was there through all of this,
True, true.
and he was an attaché to Bhutto. So so having
Faraz bhai
someone like
would be an awesome person to actually
mediate that, yeah.
dig a lot of that out from him.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I would love, like, let me figure out what I can do with this, and then I'll reach out to you and Faraz Bhai, and then
Yeah, yeah,
have a
absolutely. I'm down. I'm down for that. That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
because yeah. Thank you
Cool,
again for
man.
having me. It's
Yeah,
always a pleasure.
thanks. Yeah, I know. Thanks for coming on, and let's
Yeah.
just make sure that we keep this going and we
Yes,
find more
yes.
time. I know you have your Milad happening next weekend, and
Yeah.
good luck with that,
Thank
and
you. Thank
good
you.
luck with your new house.
Thank
Congratulations
you.
one more time.
Thank you so
Hopefully, I
much.
can pay a visit sometime soon in the future.
Inshallah, you have a room ready for you guys.
Thank you, man. I much
Yes,
appreciate it. Thanks.
of course.
Thank you. All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.